Well, hey everybody, John Retlin here, and this is another WCW Starrcade related show. Every WCW Starrcade US and TV title match ranked from worst to best. Originally I was going to do separate lists, but then I realized, well, it would be 11 US title matches and 8 TV title matches, and while that would be kind of fun, I could just conglomerate them because I could have an excuse to do a couple rants on a couple of these things. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the content so far. Yeah, there's going to be some random WCW related stuff. I'll have stuff up on the Great American Bash, Halloween Havoc later this year. The Starrcade stuff is really because I covered all the Starrcade events already at the end of 2016, and rather than rank them all, I figured I'd just do select matches, like opening matches, main event matches, and I will have a world title match one up at some point, including world titles that I forgot even existed during the Jim Crockett promotion era, mainly. But we'll also have one up for the tag titles. But let's get on with it with number 19 for the U.S. title, Wahoo McDaniel versus Superstar Billy Graham from Starrcade 84. Yes, Superstar Billy Graham competed for the U.S. title. That hack, that idiot, that guy that never deserved to be in the goddamn wrestling business besides being a good promo and having a great look. That's it. The guy couldn't fucking wrestle at all. Wahoo, granted, wasn't exactly the best worker himself, but he had some good charisma. He had, he was pretty goddamn over. Billy Graham, by this point, for fuck's sake, was so goddamn broken down. Gee, I wonder why. It was the roids. It was the roids. In this match, not really that good. It was like 4 minutes, 4.5. No, not very good. Anyway, number 18, also for the U.S. title, we get General Rection, which I believe is Hugh Morris, versus Shane Douglas from Starrcade 2000. These two fought over the U.S. title. Now, Shane Douglas, even by this point, still had a little bit left. Hugh Morris, I'm sorry, just wasn't very good. He just wasn't. I mean, he hit a cool moonsault. That was it. That was really it. I mean, the guy laughed maniacally and loved to abuse rookies and stuff like that and abuse trainees because he's a nice guy. But yeah, not a very good match. And really by this point, WCW is spiraling out of control. Number 17 for the TV title, Conan versus Chris Jericho from Starrcade 98. This is one of Jericho's last pay-per-view matches. I mean, I know he had a few other pay-per-view matches after this, but realistically, this match with Conan, it just wasn't very good. It's not that these two guys aren't good workers, they are. It just was a very throwaway match. I think it was like 7 minutes. Nope, I didn't really care about this one. I just didn't. Something about it just didn't pop. The TV title by this point, of course, was being seen kind of as a joke, which is sad because it was a pretty good mid-card title that led to a lot of really good matches. I'm actually going to get into some later in this list, but this was not all that good. Then we get to number 16, also for the TV title, Charlie Brown, which was Jimmy Valiant under a mask, versus the Great Kabuki. It was the title versus the mask. So Great Kabuki's title versus Charlie Brown's mask. And this was from Starrcade 83. Well, because the mask wasn't going to come off, well, guess who had to win? So yeah, Great Kabuki lost. So it was what it was. Jimmy Valiant, whether he's under a mask or Boogie Woogie Man, didn't matter. Whether he's a face, heel, didn't matter. He was always fucking over anywhere he went. Even if his work wasn't all that great by the early to mid 80s, because he was advancing in age, the guy could still get by on his goddamn charisma and doing a little to mean a lot. So it was an okay match. Not great, but not all that bad. Then we get another U.S. title match. We get Stunning Steve Austin versus Dustin Rhodes in a 2 out of 3 falls match at Starrcade 93. I feel bad putting this one low because I actually enjoy the match, but here's the problem. I hated the over-the-top rope, disqualification rule. I at least hated it after the 80s. Because I'm sorry, by the time you got to the 90s, it was stupid. It was just stupid. I understand doing tradition. You didn't need to do it anymore. Advance with the times. But they did it. They did this thing where Austin and Dustin had a pretty good, scrap and everything in the first fall, but then, over the top rope, and since Dustin did it, Steve Austin won by disqualification, so he won the first fall. And then they were, in the second fall, they had, a bit more of a scrap, but then Dustin got knocked off the ropes. Austin got his feet up on the ropes and pinned him 1, 2, 3. So 2 straight falls, and Austin is suddenly the new U.S. champion. It was all right. It wasn't great, but it was all right. Had it gone to 3 falls, I think would have been better. But hey, they smashed Steve Austin over, and he was U.S. champion until he lost it to Ricky Steamboat a little bit. I think July, if I remember right. I'm not exactly sure, but I know that he did lose it a number of months later. So then we get another TV title match. It's Tully Blanchard versus Dusty Rhodes in the First Blood match from Starrcade 86. Now, had this match actually been about 10, 12 minutes, I might have ranked this one a bit higher. The problem is it was very short. Now, sure, Dusty maybe shouldn't have been working super long matches at this point since he was also the booker, but also been wrestling since the 60s. So maybe he shouldn't work long matches, even though he would work longer matches, one that I'm going to mention here a bit later. But this was good for what it was. But, I mean, Tully and Dusty had a really good feud, but just the fact that it was so short. Yeah, I mean, the TV title actually meant something back then, but it wasn't great. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. And then we get to number 13, U.S. title match, Barry Windham versus Bam Bam Bigelow from Starrcade 88. It ended in a countout. That's kind of why I'm putting it down a little bit further here. But it was a good match. It was a long match. I think it was like 15 minutes. And it was weird to see Bam Bam Bigelow in the NWA. I don't know why, because I know he was in WWE for a bit, and then he left sometime after like Survivor Series 87 or shortly after that. And then he would, come back to WWE later and then be in ECW and then WCW. But it's just always weird to me to see him in, actually at this point it wasn't, Jim Crockett Promotions. It was Ted Turner who just bought the company. But this is always weird to me, but he did really well here, and him and Barry had really good in-ring chemistry. It wasn't, again, that finish, I didn't necessarily care for the countout finish, even though I understood they wanted to protect both guys, keep the title on Barry and all that. But I don't know. I think they could have gone a little bit different. I mean, sure, maybe disqualification wouldn't have been great, but countout, it was what it was. It wasn't bad. It just, the finish kind of brought it down just a little bit. And then we get to number 12, also for the U.S. title. Lex Luger versus Stan Hansen in a Texas Lariat match from Starrcade 90. One of the few non-tournament matches from Starrcade 90. It was okay. Stan Hansen shockingly beat Lex Luger for the U.S. title, I believe at Halloween Havoc 90, which was weird. Because Luger had held the title at that point for like 15 goddamn months. I don't know why they gave it to Stan Hansen, since Luger was just going to win it back. It's not like, I mean, at that point, you should have just kept it on Luger, given him another opponent, but maybe they wanted to turn him babyface, because they ended up turning him heel soon after. Well, actually, no, he turned babyface at Wrestle War 90, so he'd been babyface by this point for the better part of the whole year. And then he would turn heel after Ric Flair left the company, and he had to face Barry Windham in a cage match, and that was so great. Great American Bash 1991. Not all that good. Should have been, but it wasn't. Not a bad match. I mean, but at this point, Hansen was making such a living in Japan and was on his way to being done. I know he would wrestle for a number of years after, but Luger was on the ascent. It was a decent match. It wasn't great. And then for the TV title, Lord Steven Regal versus Ricky Steamboat from Starrcade 93. Yes, it went to a time limit draw. I know that bothers some people, but with the TV title, I don't mind it. I don't mind when, time limit draws or stuff like that happen if the match is really, really good. In the case of Windham and Bigelow, it sort of worked, with the count out, but not really. With this, it worked better because it showed that, Steamboat still had plenty left. Regal could get a good match, could have a good match with just about anybody. I mean, you didn't really have to get a good match out of Steamboat, but it was just really, really good. And I get it. Maybe it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I liked it. I thought it was a good classic wrestling match. Sure, bit of stalling, that kind of stuff to get to the time limit draw, but still, I enjoyed it. I thought the drama was good, and both guys worked really well together. Then we get to the top 10. We get to the TV title, Johnny B. Bad versus Arn Anderson. And this, I believe, was from Starrcade 94, which didn't end exactly all that great because you had Hogan versus the Butcher. Oh dear, not exactly a great match. But this was really well done. I thought Johnny B. Bad, I never cared for Mark Marrow, and this marvelous Mark Marrow, when he was in WWE. Even though he did some really good moves, he just didn't click with the WWE audience. In WCW, he actually clicked pretty damn well. And Johnny B. Bad sure was a goofy gimmick. He embraced it. Hey, the guy's doing great for himself now. I'm just giving my opinion. But him and Arn Anderson actually had, really good chemistry. And Arn was a really good TV champion. Honestly, Arn often gets forgotten about as being, how good of a champion he actually was. Even though people praise Arn, I don't think some people realize just how many title reigns he had in his career, especially in just Jim Crockett and WCW. So, if Arn can get a good match out of Johnny B. Bad, who was inexperienced, even though he'd been in the company a couple years, it was good. It was a good match, and it's worthy of what the TV title actually means. U.S. title time, DDP versus Curt Hennig from Starrcade 97. That's the number 9 spot. Really good. I can't say it's the best match. I mean, obviously not the best match on the card. I can't say it's all that great, but they told a really, really good story. Hennig avoiding the Diamond Cutter, being smart, being the wily veteran, even though DDP had been around wrestling for a while. He hadn't competed in the ring for a ton of time. But they told a good story with that. So when DDP finally hit it, there you went. It was good, though. And Starrcade 97 was a pretty packed card, even though some of it wasn't all that great. This was pretty good, and I enjoyed the psychology and the story that these guys told. We go to number 8, Vader versus Jim Duggan from Starrcade 94 for the U.S. title. I talked about this in the opening matches list. I'll put a playlist either up here or at the end of the video. But this was really good. And for two big men, Duggan was a kind of a big guy, but Vader really was, super heavyweight, doing really well. Hugely agile. And especially for his size, but just in general, the guy was really agile. This was good, though. And Vader becoming U.S. champion was definitely the right call, because Duggan nothing against Jim Duggan as a person. I just never saw him as championship material. He did not need to win it. He did not need to win it from Steve Austin. So it was what it was. But then we move on to, for the U.S. title, Dusty Rhodes versus Lex Luger in a steel cage at Starrcade 87. This is the match I'm talking about, where a year later, after that first blood match that lasted, this was a longer match and well worked. Dusty actually could get a good match, even at this stage of his career, of just about anybody. Luger, who had not been in wrestling that long by this point, was probably better as a heel because he was easy to dislike because he's a fucking douche. You can just tell by looking at the guy. But he understood that Dusty was trying to tell him, or was trying to lead him and help him, establish him as a heel. And in a steel cage, you could get, more drama and stuff like that, where could Dusty actually be the one to, take out the total package. Lex Luger could this veteran take out this young up-and-comer. Well, watch the match and you'll see, but it's the bottom line is this was the point where with Luger, they were trying to they were going to morph him into a babyface, two-face Flair soon after. He was going to, after being in the Horseman, which he didn't necessarily belong in, he was going to turn babyface soon after. But it was a good cage match. And Starrcade 87 doesn't get a lot of love, even though I get with some of the results, maybe people didn't like them. But there's one match I'm going to mention on here that I really enjoyed. But I'll mention that in a bit. So, we go to the TV title again. We go Tully Blanchard versus Ricky Steamboat from Starrcade 1984. This was terrific. You get Tully Blanchard, Ricky Steamboat, two prime workers, especially at this point, 84, when both guys were really on fire. Before even more miles got packed on their body. I mean, you could put this in 94, even though Tully was out of the business mostly at that point, and it still would have been just as good. But this was great. It was peak Tully. It was peak Steamboat. These guys were fantastic. It was great representation of the TV title. Really good stuff. And yeah, again, Starrcade 84, not exactly something you give a whole lot of love to, but, because there were some things that were good. I don't think it was as good as 83, and I think 85 was a lot better than 84. But you're going to have missteps. This was a gem on the show. And then we get to number 5, Rick Steiner versus Mike Rotunda from the 1988 Starrcade for the TV title. Rick Steiner winning the TV title and just celebrating like he won the goddamn World Series and just running around the ring and all that stuff. And it was fucking fantastic. It was great. I really did enjoy that. I thought it was absolutely wonderful. Just a great TV title match. I mean, and Rick Steiner had been teaming with Mike Rotunda and Kevin Sullivan as part of the Varsity Club, and then Dr. Death Steve Williams had joined, and Rick Steiner turned into a babyface and winning. I don't think he held the title for that long. I think he only held it till Chi-Town Rumble, so he only held it for a couple months. But him winning here is just great because it's just the way he celebrated. But it was a really well-wrestled match. Rick Steiner actually could wrestle really well, not just be a power guy. And Mike Rotunda at this point was really good, even though by 91, 92, he would, I think late 91, he would be IRS and would be working a whole lot less because he'd be wrestling in dress clothes, but also he had been wrestling for a number of years. This was peak him. Him and Rick had really good chemistry. Number 4 for the U.S. title, Eddie versus DDP. Eddie Guerrero, that is. Starrcade 1996 for the vacant U.S. title. And this, I think if I remember right, I don't remember exactly why it was vacated. I can't remember if it was because Ric Flair was U.S. champion. And I think Ric Flair had to vacate it due to an injury. Because I remember he was U.S. champion at one point. I think that might have been it. But this was a good match. Eddie and DDP always had great chemistry. They faced off in a good portion in 95, but also 96. Well, actually, mostly 96. But they just had such great chemistry. I mean, you couldn't really ask for a much better U.S. title match, even though I'm going to list a couple others. Their chemistry and their in-ring work and the psychology was just absolutely phenomenal. 1996 was a pretty damn good Starrcade, and this match is the reason why. Number 3, Chris Benoit versus Jeff Jarrett in a ladder match in 1999 for the 1999 Starrcade. Great U.S. title match. Look, I'm not a big Jeff Jarrett fan ever, will never be. I think the guy's mid-card at best. U.S. champion, Intercontinental champion, fine. World champion, fuck you, hell no. Not even in TNA, when it was TNA and not Impact. But the, great stuff that they did here with a ladder, sure, okay, you could make the argument maybe they overdid the ladder stipulation or they overdid the stipulation a lot. Not that Russo would ever overdo stipulations. Wait, ladder on a pole? Probably. He probably would have done that. Had he been able to, do even more stuff and had standards and practices, maybe not said, stop doing that shit. But this was good. Benoit taking a couple insane bumps off the ladder. That's all I'm going to say. Just watch it. You'll see what I mean. It makes you cringe. But it was a great U.S. title match. It really was. I mean, you could argue maybe I should have put this a little bit lower, but I enjoyed it. Even though it was a bit of a car crash, I enjoyed it. And number 2, this one's going to surprise a lot of people. But it's a unification match for the NWA and UWF TV titles from Starrcade 87. Nikita Koloff, who was the TV champion at the time for the NWA, and Terry Taylor, who was the UWF TV champion. A lot of people are going to say, wait, what? I thought the same thing. When I watched Starrcade 87, I was like, okay. And I was like, oh, God. Terry Taylor, Nikita Koloff, and like, what is it? It turned out to be a great match. I was surprised. I was fucking floored. This is one of those examples where, holy crap, sometimes your interpretation or whatever, it's like, oh, any, opinion you might have, holy fuck, they actually fucking did it. They got me in. They pulled me in. And when Nikita finally hit his goddamn finisher, the Russian sickle, and got the victory, that was something special. I was pretty impressed with that. And I didn't think I would be. I'm not fond of giving Terry Taylor credit, even though he's a good worker. Kind of a shit human being. You read up stories about him, you see what I mean. But it was a great match. It really goddamn was. I did not expect that I would love this match as much as I did. I mean, I watched it a number of years ago. Especially when I watched it a number of years ago and then I watched it again, just before I reviewed all the Starrcades at, the end of 2016. But I enjoyed this. I thought it was great. And then we go to number 1. For the U.S. title, Magnum TA versus Tully Blanchard in an I Quit match at Starrcade 85. Steel Cage I Quit match for the U.S. title. This match was violent as fuck. It was bloody. It was gory. It was scary. It was special. It was phenomenal. The storytelling they did was great. You could argue that this really wasn't much of a match. It was a fight, but guess what? It fucking worked. It fucking worked. It drug me in. I think by the time I had a friend whose uncle got tapes of these, and would get tapes later. And I remember watching this. I think it was 5-year-old me. So I saw this a couple months afterwards, because my birthday's in January. And I remember watching this, even 5-year-old me. I mean, I was like this, but I was transfixed just watching these two guys tear each other apart. And I could tell that, the storyline it meant something to them, and they worked really goddamn hard. So really, this match, sure, it may not be much of a match, but by God, if it didn't represent exactly what the U.S. title meant and what a blood feud would mean, this is right up there. But anyway, that's what I have to say. So what do you have to say? Agree, disagree with what I said? Like, share, subscribe. Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I will see you soon.